I want to ask you about trade because the president got a big win for the base in the sense that he has renegotiated NAFTA. Your opponent, Randy Bryce, is an iron worker and has really aligned himself with the union workers. What do you think in terms of how that's going to play come 25 days from now?
I think we have a real step forward. And so what the president's done is brought countries back to the table to negotiate trade deals. And what we've seen in this most recent trade deal in particular is dairy products, which in Wisconsin have a real difficult time previously getting exported into Canada, now going to have a much easier time getting exported into Canada. That trade win is a win for farmers. It's a win for manufacturing workers. And if we're able to trade freely, fairly, and reciprocally around the globe, that's going to be a big win here in southeast Wisconsin and across the nation.
Do you have any concerns, though, Bryan, in particular with how the president's negotiating, not just in terms of Canada and Mexico, but with China, for example?
Well, he's bringing those countries back to the table. And so we need to put in place trade policies that are to the benefit of American workers. I think that's what we're seeing the president do. I think we're taking a step forward with new NAFTA. I think hopefully we're going to see that continue with better trade deals with other countries around the globe.
Speaker Ryan hasn't always seen eye to eye with President Trump. How would you characterize your relationship with the president?
I support the president's conservative policies. I look at the trade reforms that we're getting done. I look at the tax reforms we're getting done. You can look at the regulatory reform we're getting done. And it's having a direct impact on the economics right here in Wisconsin. There's areas where manufacturing hit hard times. We're starting to come back. People are starting to see employment below 3%. We're seeing the beginning of higher wages. People want to take a step forward on these core economic policies so we can continue to see job growth and we continue to see wage growth. That's what we're focused on.
Just a couple of months ago, when I would speak to candidates, they would talk about local issues being important. It seems that the controversial appointment of Justice Kavanaugh has thrown national politics, national themes into these very local elections. For example, the UVA Center for Politics now saying that in Wisconsin, when it comes to social media trends, is all about the Supreme Court, 31%, Trump, 23%, is even beating healthcare, the economy, and taxes. How challenging has it been for you to address those more controversial national themes and not be able to focus solely on what matters to your voters?
I think what we're seeing is people getting energized. People getting energized on the right. People are energized on the left. And it's time to have a conversation of what policies we want to put in place to continue to grow the economy. And so I think that engagement is positive. I think people are tuned into the race. And it's about how do we take core policies and apply them to Washington. People are frustrated with the noise of Washington, with the distractions, inability to get things done. People want to see more getting done. I think there's an ability to take my private sector background to Washington to get more done on behalf of the American people.
No, I think that's a great point that Sherry makes, just in terms of how these hyper-partisan issues really are penetrating into the districts like the one that Bryan's campaigning in. But I also want to mention something else, because just outside of your district, Bryan, you've got a major Boeing supply chain plan, and Boeing really having a huge impact in your portion of Wisconsin. What are you hearing from those workers in particular, from those families in particular, again, on this issue of trade? And do they have any concerns at all? I get that you're in line with the president, but when you talk to these folks one-on-one, do they have any concerns at all about, for example, the tariffs that have been placed on steel and aluminum?
People want to get to the next chapter of the trade agreement. So in trade in particular, as you see the tariffs that are put in place, people understand where we're at, where the president's brought countries back to the table to negotiate these trade agreements. But people now want to get to the next step, which is ultimately lowering these barriers so American companies are able to trade freely, fairly, and reciprocally around the globe. So I think people understand where we're at in the process. People are anxious to get to the next step. And I think we're seeing progress on getting to the next step so that we can continue the economic growth that we've seen here in southeast Wisconsin and really across the nation.
And just a quick follow-up on that. What do you think, though, the end point looks like for these trade negotiations? Because everyone, even Republicans, Bryan, when I interview them in Congress, they don't know what the end point looks like, for example, with the U.S.-China trade talks.
Sure. Well, I think you can look at Canada and Mexico coming back to the table as it relates to NAFTA. Made some solid progress there. I think we're going to see that with these other countries anxiously following that. What we need to do is get to that next chapter to get these barriers to trade down on the benefit of American workers and American farmers. I think we're starting to see progress. We're just anxious to get to that next step where other countries come to the table and negotiate trade agreements that are free and fair for American workers and farmers.